The first rewind happened with a siren on and rain on the windscreen. The clock on the dashboard read 2:14. A call-out on a Lambeth estate flagged breathing problems, possible overdose. The job came through as routine urgency, the kind of line that could mean anything and nothing. The ambulance threaded through empty lanes, past closed chicken shops and foxes in the road, while the radio carried clipped voices that sounded like fatigue made audible. Outside Block D, the stairwell stank of damp and old smoke. A body lay on a landing in a hoodie, blue at the lips, chest barely moving. A needle and a torn foil sat near the skirting board. The scene was familiar enough to make the hands move without thought. A mistake still happened. A glove snagged on a broken banister. The needle rolled, kissed exposed skin at the wrist, and drew a tiny dot of blood. Time snapped back. The clock on the body-worn radio returned to 2:14 again. The glove was whole. The needle sat where it had been. The banister splinter was intact. The wrist was unbroken skin, as if the puncture had never existed. Rewinder stood frozen for half a breath, then moved with a new precision. The needle was pinned under a boot. The patient was rolled into recovery position. Naloxone was drawn and delivered with calm speed. A cough arrived like an engine catching. Color crawled back into the lips. The patient gasped and blinked, confused and alive. 10 seconds had prevented a needle stick injury and salvaged a life. 10 seconds felt clean. The shift stayed brutal. Calls stacked. A child's fever. A fall in sheltered housing. A chest pain call that turned into paperwork and apologies because the ambulance arrived too late to be useful. London did not stop needing things because a fracture existed. London needed things harder. Rewinder began using the 10 seconds for more than safety. A missed cannula became a perfect cannula. A fumbled drug calculation became a smooth correction. A difficult relative became manageable after a rewind used to adjust tone, step position, and the angle of the body between a door and a hallway. Each reset shaved off a mistake that would have produced questions later. The notes began to look unreal, too clean, too consistent. Outcomes too tidy for the borough and the hour. The first time a rewind was used for selfishness, it happened in the drug cupboard at A&E. A clinician turned away for a second. A morphine vial sat on a tray with 2 others. The staff bathroom was locked, the corridor full of shouting, and the shift felt endless. Rewinder palmed a vial without thinking, then caught the reflection of the movement in a glass panel and felt the hot punch of fear. Time snapped back. The vial sat untouched again. The clinician had not turned away yet. The choice repeated, but the shame arrived early. The vial stayed on the tray. The hand stayed empty. 10 seconds prevented theft. 10 seconds also revealed how easy theft could be. A week later, the offer arrived in a different form. Not a temptation, but an instruction wrapped in politeness. A serious incident review was called at a hospital trust office near Elephant and Castle. Folding chairs, a kettle that boiled too slowly. Printed timelines. A laminated badge on the visitor lanyard reading, Cromwell Applied Systems. The trust manager spoke about continuity anomalies, captured on ambulance telemetry and ward CCTV. Timestamps that jumped, missing frames, outcomes that did not match recorded actions. The manager spoke like a person forced to discuss ghosts using spreadsheet language. The Cromwell representative spoke last. The voice stayed calm, almost bored. The representative described repeatable 10-second discontinuities and operational value. No accusation landed, no praise landed. Only a statement that the discontinuity had been noticed, isolated, and mapped to a person who happened to be present in too many perfect outcomes. Rewinder left with a contact number and a line that sounded like support, but felt like ownership. Cromwell could keep regulators away if Cromwell received cooperation. Cooperation started small. Stand near a corridor camera at certain times. Trigger a reset and create a timestamp gap that made footage unusable. A privacy fix. A risk control. A tool. The first job was a custody to hospital escort. A detainee arrived with a head injury, handcuffed to a trolley, flanked by officers. The detainee spat blood and insults. A nurse complained about paperwork. A body-worn camera blinked red, recording everything in the fluorescent glare. A Cromwell message arrived. Create a 10-second gap. Rewinder waited until an officer leaned close, voice rising. Time snapped back. 10 seconds repeated. The same gestures happened again, slightly different, but the camera's internal clock stuttered. The red light kept blinking, dutiful and blind, while a hole appeared inside the file. The officers left calmer. The nurse stopped arguing. A bruise on the detainee's jaw looked a shade darker than before. The medical notes did not mention it. The footage could not prove it. The power stopped being clean. The moral trade-off sharpened on a night call in Bermondsey. A tower block. A flat with a door forced open by firefighters. A man on the kitchen floor, gray, not breathing. A woman on the sofa, shaking, repeating the same sentence until it lost meaning. A toddler crying from a bedroom. Rewinder started compressions. Ribs shifted under hands. The defib pads were placed. The shock was delivered. Nothing. The clock showed 3:06. The woman screamed. The toddler's crying rose into something raw and animal. The scene filled with the kind of failure that followed staff home and sat in silence at breakfast. Time snapped back. 10 seconds returned. The pads were unplaced again. The hands were unbloodied again. The same failure waited ahead like a wall. Rewinder tried a different angle, a different rhythm, a faster shock, a different airway position. 10 seconds could not manufacture miracles, but 10 seconds could chase the one thin path where a heart restarted. On the third rewind, a cough came. The man gasped. A pulse returned, weak but present. Relief hit the room like a drug. Outside, blue lights approached another ambulance, called as backup. The backup vehicle entered the estate too fast on wet tarmac, clipped a bollard, and rolled into a parked car. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. A scream cut through the night and then stopped. The revived man lived because 10 seconds were spent repeatedly inside the flat. The crash happened because seconds were lost outside it. Rewinder ran down the stairwell toward the wreck and found a paramedic pinned in a twisted doorframe. Eyes wide, breath shallow, blood pooling under a high-waist sleeve. The pinned paramedic's radio crackled with panicked voices, asking for status, asking for location, asking for certainty. 10 seconds could not rewind a whole burrow. 10 seconds could not rewind the flat and the crash at the same time. 10 seconds could only pick a single place to be true. Rewinder stood in the rain, breathing hard, listening to two outcomes fighting for space, a revived stranger upstairs and a colleague dying on the road. The choice landed like a verdict. Time did not rewind again. By dawn, 2 incident logs existed, one praising an unlikely resuscitation, another describing a preventable crash. Somewhere between those logs, a person's hands had shaped reality and called it duty. A Cromwell car waited outside the hospital later that morning. A folder sat on the passenger seat. The representative spoke softly, offering structure, oversight, and protection. The representative described a future where Rewind served the state, the police, and the contractors who kept London working when London broke. Rewinder signed because guilt needed a frame, and the city offered only cages or contracts. Like the video and subscribe for the next episode. Thanks for watching.